My supervisor asked me to start documenting my job, in case you get hit by a bus. He said it with a laugh, but he didn't laugh with his eyes. Then, 2 days later, he introduced me to a new hire and told me I'd be training her directly. No HR email, no team announcement, just her, sitting at the spare desk beside mine like she'd always been there. I work a pretty unglamorous corporate job, operations support for a mid-sized logistics company. Think spreadsheets, vendor portals, weird one-off problems that only happen at 4:58 p.m. on a Friday. It's not sexy, but I'm good at it. I'm the person people ping when something is stuck, and nobody knows why. For 3 years I built little systems to keep the chaos manageable. Templates, checklists, folder structures, a personal cheat sheet of who to call at which vendor when the main hotline gives you the runaround. My supervisor, Mark, always acted like he valued that. He'd call me the glue in meetings. He'd drop my name when leadership asked why our queue times were down. So when he said we were expanding, I believed him. The workload had been heavier. We'd had 2 teammates quit in the last 6 months and never fully backfilled. It made sense that we'd finally get help. The new hire's name was Jenna. Late 20s, polite, sharp, the kind of person who smiles a lot but watches everything. She showed up with a brand new laptop already set up, access to all our tools, and, this stuck out, permissions I didn't even have. She could approve certain refunds and I still had to route those to Mark. Mark's explanation was breezy. IT just did a standard package, he said. We'll clean it up later. I shrugged it off because I wanted it to be normal. Plus, Jenna seemed genuinely eager. She took notes. She asked good questions. She didn't do that annoying thing where new hires act like they're above the process. She even admitted, quietly, that she'd never worked in logistics. Training her should have been straightforward. Instead, Mark turned it into a daily performance. First escalation. He started dropping by my desk at random, hovering while I explained things. He'd say, "Show her how you handle the reconciliation," like I hadn't been doing it the same way for years. Then he'd correct me in front of her on little stuff that didn't matter. "Actually, we don't call it a reconciliation, it's a variance review," he'd say, like that changed anything. I'd laugh it off and keep going, but I could feel the shift. It was subtle, but it made me self-conscious, like I was auditioning for my own job. Second escalation. The documentation. Mark sent me a template labeled Critical Role SOP, and asked me to fill it out by the end of the week. It wasn't a normal, write down steps, doc. It was forensic. Every decision point, every exception, every email subject line. He wanted screenshots. He wanted specific vendor contacts. He wanted the logic behind why I did things the way I did. I said, "This is a lot. Are we getting audited or something?" He smiled like I was silly. No. Business continuity. You know how it is. But here's the thing. Mark never cared about documentation before. He was the king of, "We'll figure it out later." Third escalation. Jenna's assignments. Within a week, Mark started routing her the kind of work he used to give me when he wanted it done right. Not the boring repetitive tickets. The messy ones. Vendor disputes, internal escalations, customer credits that needed a narrative. He'd CC her on emails that had previously been between him and me. And then he'd forward me Jenna's draft responses and say, "Can you review this?" Help her with tone. The tone wasn't the issue. The issue was that she was writing the exact emails I used to write. I tried to keep my paranoia in check. I told myself I was being insecure. I told myself the team was finally investing in cross-training, and I should be happy someone else could carry the load. Then I noticed the calendar invites. Mark and Jenna had a recurring one-on-one twice a week. Jenna had been here 9 days. I didn't care about that in principle. Supervisors meet with new hires. But Mark and I had a one-on-one maybe once every 3 weeks, and half the time he canceled it. Seeing him suddenly become Mr. Mentorship made my stomach drop. The turning point came from something stupid, a printer. Jenna printed a document and accidentally left it at the copier. I recognized my own name on it because it was in the header. I know I shouldn't have read it. I didn't set out to. But when you see your name in a header next to words like transition plan, your eyes don't politely look away. It was a document titled Ops Support Coverage, Risk and Continuity. My job was listed as a single point of failure. Under mitigation, It said, train Jenna R to full ownership of vendor escalations and variance review by end of month. Under next steps, it said, reduce dependency on current specialist, align role to new structure. It wasn't my imagination. It was written down, and it wasn't about expansion. It was about replacement. I went back to my desk with that hot, floaty feeling you get when you're about to either cry or fight someone in a parking lot. For a few minutes I just stared at my inbox, trying to decide if I was overreacting. In hindsight, the hit by a bus joke wasn't a joke. It was him telling me, with a grin, that I was disposable. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I forwarded myself the last 3 months of my performance emails. Mark praising my work, me flagging issues early, me asking for workload help. I exported my project tracker. I took screenshots of the Q metrics I'd been maintaining. Not because I thought it would magically save me, but because I wanted a record that I wasn't being pushed out for performance. Then I scheduled a meeting with Mark. Not a casual chat, a calendar invite with an agenda. He showed up 5 minutes late, coffee in hand, like I was the one inconveniencing him. I kept my voice even. Are you planning to eliminate my role? His face did this quick, controlled flicker. The expression of someone caught without their script. What? No, he said too fast. Why would you think that? I said, because I found a transition document with my name on it. And I'm being asked to document every part of my job and train someone with higher permissions than me. For a beat, he didn't deny it. He just looked tired. Then he went into corporate speak. We're restructuring. Leadership wants redundancy. There's an opportunity to realign responsibilities. Realign mine to what? I asked. He finally said the quiet part out loud. They're considering moving the specialist role to a lower band. Jenna was hired at that band. It's a cost-saving initiative. So that was the underlying reason. Not expansion. A downgrade. Same work, cheaper title. I felt embarrassed in this very specific way, like I'd been smiling at someone who already decided they didn't respect me. I asked, so you hired her to do my job for less money, and you wanted me to train her? He said, it's not personal. Which, honestly, is the most insulting sentence in the English language. I didn't blow up. I didn't cry. I said, I understand. I also need you to understand I won't be doing full knowledge transfer without clarity on my future here. He frowned. That's not really how teamwork works. Neither is lying, I said, and my voice surprised me. Calm, flat, like I'd already accepted something. That night I updated my resume. I applied to 6 jobs before bed, fueled by spite and the weird relief of finally knowing. The next 2 weeks were awkward. Jenna could tell something changed. Mark stopped hovering, probably because he didn't want an audience if I confronted him again. I still helped Jenna, but I didn't hand over the keys to every lockbox in my brain. I gave her the basics. I pointed her to existing resources. I stopped volunteering my private vendor contacts and my personal shortcuts. Meanwhile, I looped in HR, not to tattle, but to ask directly what the restructuring meant for my role. HR did what HR does. Vague reassurance, no promises, lots of, we value you. But that conversation created a paper trail. Then, unexpectedly, leadership called a meeting. Apparently Mark had pitched the lower band idea as if the work was simple and easily transferable. Leadership had questions once they actually looked at the metrics and the volume of escalations. They asked why the single point of failure had never been promoted or cross-trained earlier. They asked why Mark had allowed such dependency in the first place. And because I'd saved receipts and stayed calm, I was able to speak plainly without sounding hysterical. I explained the complexity, the vendor relationships, the risk of delays, the historical reasons we were where we were. I didn't trash Mark, I just described reality. A week later, HR offered me a retention package and a title change into a higher band, with the explicit expectation that I would formalize processes and mentor others. Paid, recognized, and with proper time allocated. Jenna stayed, but she became what I originally assumed she was, an actual additional team member. She wasn't my replacement, she was my backup. Mark stopped calling me the glue, and started being weirdly formal with me, like I was a document that could escalate. I didn't stay much longer anyway. The trust was cracked. 2 months after that, I accepted a job at another company with better pay and a manager who didn't joke about me getting hit by a bus. The funny part is, if Mark had just been honest from the beginning, I might have helped with the transition out of basic decency. But the moment he tried to turn my competence into a cost-saving trick, it stopped being a team and became a negotiation. I used to think being indispensable was the goal. Now I think being respected is, and if you have to choose, respect pays better.